So I was reading a thread about Steam hardware, and I noticed a bunch of people talking about how Life Alyx and any other VR game should be able to be played flat, that is to say played on a normal screen without VR hardware. Now I could understand the argument, I really can. You've been waiting on a new Half-Life game for 13 years, you can't afford VR hardware, and you feel betrayed that Valve would not only take 13 years to release this, but they also released it for $1,000 hardware you don't own, and you want to play the game. Now, if you're a slow brain and you just talk out your ass without knowing what you're talking about, you might say, Valve only released this to sell their own hardware. They made it just to sell Valve indexes. Which is the stupidest argument ever when you even think about what you're talking about and realize that Half-Life Alyx not only fully works with, but also has pre-map button layouts for the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, the Oculus Quest, the HP Reverb, and probably more headsets I don't even know exist. So the argument that this game was made only to sell indexes goes completely out the window when you could literally play this game on an Oculus Quest 2, which is 3/10 the price. But so now let's get into the real meat and bones of the argument. Valve should have made the game playable flat too and not VR only. Now like I said man, I understand the argument, I really do. I didn't have VR when the game came out and I wanted to play it on my PC too, but the game is built for VR and it plays so much better because of that. These games play fundamentally different because it's in VR and everything becomes a different experience because of that. In this video, I'm going to be highlighting the small details put into Half-Life Alyx that makes this game stand out as a revolutionary VR title and why it would not be received well playing flat. Let's start with my most favorite part of the game, reloading. I've never once played a game before where reloading is fun, but in Half-Life Alyx, it's my favorite part of the game because it's in VR. Let's take a look at what reloading in any Half-Life game looks like on PC. I press R, and my character does a generally boring animation. Even in combat, this is rarely a threat or engaging or fun in any way. Reloading usually feels like a chore. Who wants to just stop playing the game for a second and watch an animation? That's actually my least favorite part about Doom Eternal, an incredibly fun, fast-paced game, but when you're low on health or ammo, if there's nothing laying around, your only option is to go from 60 to 0 real quick and just pause as you watch a glory killer chainsaw animation. Sure, the animation's cool looking, I guess, but I personally never found anything fun about going from flying all around the room, hitting crazy flick shots, comboing all my weapons, and then, oh, I'm low on health, I gotta walk up to this guy and press V and watch this animation for a second. Oh, cool, now I can play the game again. But like I said, in Half-Life Alyx, it's my favorite part of the game because it's still engaging gameplay, if not more engaging than shooting itself. The feeling of several zombies pouring in on you in a tight hall or ducking behind cover as several combines shoot at you from all angles as you quickly drop the mag, reach over your back, grab a new one, slam it in the gun, rack the slide back and get back to aiming and just start dumping into them is such a satisfying feeling that you just cannot capture by just pressing R. The feeling of one by one loading shells into your shotgun, not even using a button, but just flipping the shotgun back closed with the flick of the wrist, sliding the rack back, and just blowing a fucking zombie's head off is so much fun and it's such a satisfying feeling that you just cannot capture playing flat. I mean, you practically do the same thing in Half-Life 2, and truthfully doing that is just not that much fun. But that transitions into my next point, which is about how drastically the experience of the game is different between playing VR and playing flat. When you're in VR, you just do things differently that you would not while playing flat, and the game is built around that. When I first launched Half-Life Alyx, I and many others spent a good 10 plus minutes just messing around at the very start of the game, not moving more than a few feet, just picking up objects, just leaning on the rail, throwing things off the roof, putting things in a bucket, looking at the city. And then I walked up the stairs and I found markers, and I spent another 10 minutes drawing on the whiteboard. Do you know why I spent 20 minutes messing around at the beginning when there's a whole game to play? Because I was blown away by the level of detail and how immersive it was and how things actually seemed to have weight despite me only holding controllers. How realistic the sense of scale was, how well the markers actually worked. I remember Duke Nukem Forever was the first game I ever remember having the marker gimmick, and how long did I spend on that? I drew a penis on the whiteboard in 10 seconds and I walked away.
Oh man, that is... I mean, I don't understand any of it, but I bet if I did, that guy over there would still have his arm. And at least one of his balls.
There's just nothing entertaining about playing with that flat, but a decade later I see the same exact gimmick in Half-Life Alyx and I spent 10 plus minutes messing around with it because it was that immersive in VR. The game is incredibly immersive and it's built around that and it plays on it. In the early playtesting, devs found that players were constantly just opening drawers, lockers, moving boxes around, and constantly looking behind in other things, and they weren't actually playing the game as much as the devs were hoping. The devs noticed this and they built on that sense of discovery people were looking for in VR, and as a result they made ammo a lot sparser. It is incredibly rare to have an abundance of ammo for a single gun. To find ammo in the game, you regularly need to be looking around and exploring the world, checking train carts, desk drawers, filing cabinets, moving things around on shelves, checking bodies. There's a genuine need to discover and interact with all these small details of the world. I can't count how many times I found ammo or resin under a flipped upside down bucket I picked up that would have been totally hidden had I not actually interacted with the world. This sense of immersion and how much you could interact with the world isn't the main selling point of the game by any means, but I do genuinely believe it's a very defining feature of what makes the game special. The sense of immersion and interactiveness would be totally lost on people playing the game flat for several reasons, but 3 important ones in my opinion. The most important is that they aren't playing the game in 3D with a 360 view of the world. Obviously, when playing flat, you play in 2D and generally only have a 1920 by 1080 view of the world. Flat players don't see a combine for the first time and get that feeling of, whoa, holy shit, you're a giant. You're like a fucking gorilla in a suit. Because they don't have that same sense of scale and perspective. Or to go back to the example earlier of zombies pouring down a hall in a tight hallway and you're out of ammo and you got to reload, the sense of panic you feel in VR, you will not feel playing flat because there's always that disconnect of you from the screen. Zombies on a screen don't look like they're right next to me, they look like they're on a screen. Meanwhile in VR, because I have 2 screens against my eyeballs making it 360, these zombies quite literally look like they're right next to me, real life swinging on me. This isn't to say you're going to feel 100% genuine fear or panic while playing the game, but there's definitely a heightened sense of it while playing in VR, and that's totally lost flat. The second important reason is that while playing flat, you cannot physically interact with the world. This is such a huge part of Half-Life Alyx, and like I said earlier, the whole game is designed around it. Ammo is purposely sparse, and you're meant to interact with and search the world for ammo. If you see a filing cabinet, you're probably going to want to pull out every drawer. If you see a row of lockers, you're probably going to want to open every locker there is, and generally there's always ammo or resin inside them to find. Normally this would be a hassle, but players naturally do this in VR anyways. When I first started playing the game, I didn't stand there playing with everything for 10 to 20 minutes because the game told me to. I did it because in VR you naturally want to interact with the game world you're playing in, and the game is purposely designed around that. Even in VR, sometimes it could be a hassle because I just want to go and unload my whole shotgun, but I just can't find enough bullets for it, and after a while, I get tired of searching for all this and still not finding enough just to shoot my shotgun. And if I'm having that problem when interacting with the world is actually fun and natural in VR, imagine doing that flat. Constantly being low on bullets and hitting E on every locker, picking up every crate with E and flipping every bucket with E, just E, E, E. The whole game? That wouldn't be fun. That would just be bad design. But it works well in VR because that's naturally what players do anyways. These systems also compound with other elements in VR. I just explained how ammo is purposely made sparser for the purpose of interacting with the world in VR. Another big part of why ammo can be sparse though is because you might miss a decent amount of shots in VR compared to say aiming with a mouse. It's obviously a lot easier to shoot on a mouse than it is to actually shoot. A lot of us have spent hours perfecting our aim, and hitting accurate shots across the map isn't really hard by any means. I don't know about you guys, but I've only killed a few people in real life and my aim isn't that good. At least not anything to brag about. So I end up missing some shots every once in a while. More than I would on PC at least. And this further compounds the scarce ammo and the need to be searching and interacting with the world. It may not seem like a huge deal, but in game design, all these elements coming together and interconnecting is what makes the overall experience so special. God of War is revered by people as a masterpiece, but nothing it does sticks out in any way. The combat, the climbing, the exploration, the skill trees, the enemies, nothing is amazing. They're all just good enough. But them all tying together organically to flesh out the greater game makes the game so special and such a treat to enjoy. Factorio is the second highest rated game on Steam of all time, and if you've ever played it before, you know it's so special, not because, oh, placing inserters is so fun, or I love connecting electricity poles, but because every system in the game ties together and builds on top of each other so well to make such an enjoyable experience. A game doesn't have to be perfect, and Half-Life Alyx isn't by any means. For fuck's sake, you cannot even melee in this game. But when you start tearing away all the super small elements in VR that combine to make this game so special and immersive, like leaning on railings, picking up objects, drawing with markers, searching the world, and missing shots, if you take that tiny stuff away, you end up with a very, very different experience from what I and other people had, and you will not receive or enjoy the same experience that made it so special for everyone who played it in VR. Missing shots is an easy transition into my last point, which is that shooting on a mouse and keyboard is nowhere near as fun as in VR. Not only is it not as fun, but the gunplay itself plays entirely differently mechanically. I already made the point earlier about reloading and how different that is from an enjoyment standpoint, but there's 2 points being made here I really want to clarify. It's not only one, a more enjoyable, more fun experience to shoot in VR, but 2, it's also a mechanically different experience that changes the gameplay. You're missing out on 2 things playing this flat. The actual gunplay itself is an experience and is the only progression system in the game besides the story. Like I've mentioned before, you're not only searching for ammo through the game but resin. You use resin to upgrade your gun, and these upgrades are so significant because you're in VR. When you unlock the hollow sight for your gun and you can actually start scoping and landing actual shots really accurately from far away, it's such an awesome upgrade that feels super meaningful and powerful. And holy fuck, when you get that laser beam and you can just start hip firing and landing shots, oh boy, that's the one right there. These upgrades really just wouldn't mean shit when playing in 2D. They didn't even bother giving you a scope, let alone a laser for any of your guns in Half-Life before, except the crossbow, because it wouldn't really add anything. You were able to already nail these shots from across the map anyways. But in VR, they're a monumental difference. It's just another small VR detail that adds to the overall picture and makes the game such a great immersive experience. And that's without even mentioning a ton of the other small elements that goes into VR gun battles that makes them more immersive and fun. Like physically ducking behind cover, slowly peeking the corners trying to find a shot, using the grav gloves, physically throwing grenades, shooting up heroin, hugging cover and sticking your gun above and around a corner and just blindly spraying and hoping you hit something. Could Valve have made Half-Life Alyx playable flat or non-VR? Sure, they could have, without a doubt. Hell, there's a fan-made mod that appears to look really well done. But fuck, I'm looking at this footage from one of my favorite moments when you first get the shotgun and zombies cave in on you and you get to blast their fucking heads off with this new awesome weapon. And it just looks so fucking lame flat, dude. It really does. Valve could have made this playable flat, sure. But they knew it wouldn't be enjoyable. The game is specifically crafted for VR, and restricting it to VR only, they were able to make a game that's pretty much universally considered the best VR game. Ask anyone with VR what their must-play games are, and Half-Life Alyx is always the top dog. Half-Life has always been a showcase of the future of games and the advances in technology Valve has brought to the games. The original Half-Life showed us what an actual cohesive world with the story and characters we actually care about can do for a game, and it revolutionized how stories were told in video games. Half-Life 2 showed us the magic of a full-fledged dynamic physics system and how that could revolutionize gameplay. And Half-Life Alyx is the flagship of VR gaming to so many people, showing us what a true VR game could be like with a real immersive, interactable world with no compromises for 2D or flat players, like other games I've seen parroted as counterexamples like Resident Evil 7. Now, I'm not saying every VR game should stay VR only at all. There is never a downside to a 2D game getting a VR port, even if you need to install 900 plus mods just to make it semi-bearable. And plenty of games benefit greatly from having both. I love having the options to play Dirt Rally or Euro Truck Simulator in VR, but sometimes I don't feel like putting on the headset. I just want to play it on my screen. I love having the options to have my friends who don't have VR still be able to come into VR chat or come play paintball in Rec Room. These options are great and expand the opportunities for VR in so many ways, and I would never discourage them. But games like Half-Life Alyx that are specifically created and tailored for VR should stay VR only. Yes, that does suck for the people who don't have VR. You are missing out on a fantastic experience. But you aren't going to get that same experience if you port it over to 2D. In my opinion, you will ruin your experience playing this game with the no VR mod. While it may not be accessible to everyone, thankfully VR is cheaper and more accessible now than it ever has been. I'm not sponsored by anyone and I don't have a particular fondness for any company, but I will say this. The HTC Vive is a piece of fucking shit. Don't buy this garbage. I originally had a line in here about how a $300 headset that's better than my HTC Vive in any way is something I could get behind, but now that the Quest 2 has dominated the VR market and Facebook owns a majority share, they've increased the price by $100, so they can lick my fucking balls, dude. I highly encourage anyone wanting to play this game but doesn't have a headset yet to just be patient, man. This game is a treat and makes for a fantastic first experience in VR. You don't want to rob yourself of that.